As far as California Stewardship Network and the California Forward is concerned, we got together and we agreed on a common goal. And that common goal, again, is persuading the governor and the legislature to identify the development of globally competitive regional economies as the overarching economic strategy of the state of California, and working together to make sure that there's a single entity that would make this happen. It's no longer really acceptable that we do not have the consolidation of activities at the state level. We need to have something that's a focal point that brings together all the pieces so that regions can actually work together on this, and something's starting to happen in that regard. The next thing is we began to work together, and we conducted a survey, and we actually reached out to all the regions and said, okay, what are your industry clusters and what are the policy requirements that are holding you back? And we began to share that information with not only the Think Long Committee, but others that are working in this area. And we discovered, I'd confirm what we thought, which is each region has a set of industries, some of which are growing, some of which are positive right now, but they have similar policy problems. And they fall into basically 4 areas. Some regulatory issues that are holding things back, regulatory streamlining, try to speed up the regulatory process, things that have held things back. Investment in workforce, training people for the jobs that are necessary, preparing people for the transitions. Infrastructure, paying for the cost of paying not only physical infrastructure, but other aspects of infrastructure that are necessary, water and others. And finally, innovation, making sure that we have the capital available to promote new businesses. It came out everywhere. Everybody's concerned about those 4 topics. So we began to work, but just back up one slide. We began to work with this Think Long Committee and try to connect the work of the California Forward, California Stewardship, with this Think Long Committee on Task Forces, Jobs, Infrastructure, and Economy. That committee is chaired by the Lieutenant Governor. The Lieutenant Governor has a responsibility in economic development. He chairs something called the Commission on Economic Development. The Lieutenant Governor has gone around the state and he's been trying to position himself to be a leader in the economy. We ended up working with others, Julie Wright from San Diego, Bill Allen from LA, Ashley Swearingen, the mayor of Fresno, is on this, and others. And this group began to come together. Julie and I helped staff this group, and we've actually come up with a set of recommendations. But what's interesting about this is that there is a lot happening right now in the state to try to figure out how to fix things. And this Think Long Committee is one. It's a well-funded initiative to try to support implementation. The report is now coming out. The next thing is there are other initiatives that are underway. One of which you may have heard is the fact, in addition to the Think Long Task Force, the next one is the Lieutenant Governor has an economic growth and competitiveness agenda, which he's been working on and he released in July. Then you have the California Council of Science and Technology has just come out with a report co-chaired by Julie Wright on innovation, and part of which is how to promote broadband and how to make sure that we have digitally enhanced education so everyone has access to broadband. And California Stewardship Network, and then there's another group called the Real Coalition, which represents regions across the state. All these groups are starting to work together. So you have regional groups and the state groups saying, how do we fit together to work on some common agenda items? And what we did, as far as Think Long, is there's a lot of work that's already out there. So the first thing we did was we reviewed 20 prior studies and reports. There's a lot of material that has been done over the last 10 years to sort of identify the problems. We looked at them all. Next thing we did, we interviewed over 50 people, business, government, community, anybody you can get your hands on to try to help us figure out what do we need to do. And then finally, we reviewed all this with that task force, and then we presented it to the committee their session in August. So what are the major themes or findings here? Well, number one, we simply don't have an economic strategy at the state level. We've let ourselves fall behind. There was an economic strategy panel when Julie Wright was the head of Trade and Commerce in the 1980s. There were efforts going on to pull things together, and there was an attempt to develop an economic strategy. We sort of fell behind on that. We don't have an economic strategy. We need one, and it's time to develop it now. Second thing is, again, state economic development activities are fragmented. They're spread out across about 30 different locations. Some of them are in the business transportation housing agency, some of them are in the labor workforce agency, some of them are here, there, and everywhere. We're really not organized for economic development. We've documented that. And then finally, we need both a defensive and an offensive strategy. The defensive strategy is to protect what we have, to hold on to retain our companies, to help them grow. One of the things that we heard over and over again is a pretty simple concept, but we need to have total customer service. State and regional organizations need to listen to their businesses, they need to respond to their needs, and help them be available to expand and locate. We used to have red teams where people would go out and work with businesses that needed help. We're talking in this report about concierge services. If a business has a need, they ought to know where to go, they ought to get the help they need to be able to solve their problem. This has come up over and over again about being able to cut through red tape and being able to solve problems. We need to solve that problem and take care of it. The other piece is we need to be serious about the long-term investments that are necessary for the state, and we need to figure out how to pay for them.